Welcome to Fifth Dimensional Studies. So here today we're going to be talking about something very, very revolutionary, I would say. We're dealing with the fifth dimension and, we're dealing with alien bloodlines, but we have to deal with the origin of understanding and where these alien bloodlines come from. Because in order for us to know what we're accessing, in order for us to know what we can do, we sort of have to know where we've been. We sort of have to understand our history and why this is so important for us to raise our minds to the fifth dimension, to assist the mind in understanding itself. As I was hearing today, we are one being, and I was reminded that we are simply the mind of this planet seeking to understand itself, seeking to transcend this experience to return back to the oneness. And it's not simply just the mind of this planet, because the people here are able to become gods. And not God meaning you have to worship them or anything, or sit at their feet, or they want to take control of people, but God being in the way that they can connect with the spirit, they can connect with the mind that we are all a part of, go to higher levels of reality based on the DNA that is within them, vibrate on a different frequency to project to higher levels of reality, higher dimensions, fifth dimension, because that's where we're currently situated. And with that, just means you're looking at a being that has the DNA and the capability to converse with spirit, to deal with the world of waves, to deal with the world of the quantum. And for years, almost aeons on this planet, that's what has been worshipped. Beings that could go to higher levels of reality, beings that could go and converse with gods and be on the fifth dimension and see these things clearly, see reality from a higher level of understanding. And they became mystery systems on how to get people to that level, how to get multiple people to that level. Then they became religions where they worshiped those people who were at those levels, but that was a control system and a later day thing. And so what we have to get into before we can get into tactics on how to get to the fifth dimension, we must truly understand the history behind this whole shebang, this history behind our entire journey to this point. And I'm not going to, we could be here for hours discussing, Atlantis, discussing, what happened after the fall of Atlantis, and understanding these bloodlines. But I'm going to give you a couple of books. I'm going to give you a couple of documentaries that you'll be able to watch. That way we can, get the entire scope of the information and get the inner and understanding to, consciousness on here on this planet, where we currently are situated. So, dealing with the history, we have to deal with Atlantis, of course, because that is the last known civilization that we know of that had reached a level of an advanced state. Now, all these stories had seemingly been lost from history. But when we deal with the information and we look closer at what we've already been presented with, which would be, our religious systems, our cultural and religious systems, they each have the same story of the flood and things of that nature. But when we deal with the one that's most closest and personal to us, we deal with Christianity. What I was able to see is that the King James Version of the Bible, there are different versions and a lot of many versions, but either way, that canon of the Bible is representing certain stories that come out of Africa. Those ancient stories that come out of Africa come from a people who traveled from one part of the world to that part of the world from America. And what I can prove is that the stories from those people, the culture of those people, the language of those people, all root back to the American continent, which is Atlantis. And what we're going to go in and do is prove that, first, that the 10 tribes of Israel were here on the American continent. And when Christopher Columbus came here, he was searching for the 10 tribes and Mount Zion. We're going to prove that with his own words. We're also going to get into what happened before the fall and what happened after the fall in transition. And then we're going to deal with the Christian lineage of descent from before and after the fall. Okay, so we'll deal with languages, names of people, places, artifacts, and mystery systems. Okay, so we're going to take biblical stories and compare them to the histories of people on the American continent and show comparison. I'm going to take stories of Joshua kicking out the descendants of Ham for taking a lot that is not theirs. I'm going to compare that to tribes on the American continent that started a civilization in Egypt and Greece, in Africa and Europe. Okay, and then stories of David kicking out Goliath compared to the story of Akhenaten coming into Egypt and Africa, or the Hittites coming into Egypt, or Ken at a certain point in history, traveling from the other side of the world, traveling from the Americas over to Africa and Egypt and things of that nature. And so when you deal with this, you do realize that there have been many trips back and forth, many major documented trips back and forth between these two civilizations, which were actually one civilization. So is what we're going to see. So the story of Moses, the story of Moshe and the Mexica, or the Aztec people, being freed from an evil king. They left Utah or Judah, and after leaving Judah or Aslan or Atlantis, they created their own colony and named themselves after their Messiah, who was named Moshe or Moses, and we'll get into that. Then also the story of Jesus. We'll get into more of the Mexican mysteries. This is going to be Rudolf Steiner's lecture, which is a really good read. And it's about the story of the crucified black magician by a follower of the Great Spirit Yahweh. Okay? So then we're also going to be going to the Pistis Sophia, showing how the Pistis Sophia is the same as the Aztec Maya literature and depicts a history of aliens who are our ancestors and came to this planet at a certain point in time to save the planet from the rule of another species of alien. So yes, we have to combine all literature and lore, because once again, we deal with the fact that the Dogon know that their DNA comes from Sirius, that DNA of the Egyptians comes from Sirius. This is where they point out, we know that these bloodlines are of the worldly and come from higher dimensions. And when we deal with this, we do have to deal with this in a real historic way, because these bloodlines do exist and they did become kings and queens at a certain point in time. Aliens were running this thing. Aliens have most likely always been running this thing. And so now I also show how David represents tribes of people and not just a person, and how those people represent the goddess, which would be the Pistis Sophia. Okay, Sophia being the Great Mother. And we'll also see how the Christ represents a body of people, or our ancestors who came to save us from being subjected to the rule of another alien species, the Syrians, and the other aliens, or the other bloodline, which Matthias Di Stefano called the Nimnir, would represent another line of descent as well, because they did seed the planet as well, or mix with the people that were here. And so a lot of those bloodlines and things of that nature still exist. And what I see is that these bloodlines have been warring for centuries of control over this place. So I connect everything on the moors, and I connect on everything to the Garden of Eden, or Mount Zion, which is in Utah, and focus on control over that place based on not just bodies of people, but bodies of people acting in the interests of otherworldly beings, of higher vibratory beings. I focus in on the work of our ancestors and how they did what they did. And we deal with the systems, the mystery systems, and the cultural systems, the symbolic systems. And once we deal with the understanding and the connection of the cultures by the mystery systems and the cultural systems, then we can get into techniques on how to get to the fifth dimension with that entire understanding in place. Because then I can give you my travels and my understanding based on what I've taught you here, what I've shown you here. And because it makes more sense, so to speak. Me just talking and like, I'm this, I'm that. It's hard for motherfuckers to really understand or get the scope of what is really going on here. And so once we've done that, I'll get techniques on how to get to the fifth dimension, more about my travels, and then we'll start to discuss prophecy. And interpreting prophecy, dealing with the goddess Kali, who gave me some cool shit. And it's something that I've been using since I started. And now that I finally figured out what it actually means, and now that I've lived prophecy, I've lived the prophecy, and I've fulfilled it in my understanding of myself. And now that that has happened, I have to give that understanding and reflect that in creation. And the last step would be going over details of a holographic account. And this just deals with how psychedelics help and allow you to understand going beyond the third dimension, going into and connecting with the fifth dimension, and how to do so, and what to expect, how to go to the future, how to accurately read what is on people's minds, and not just hear what is on people's minds, but actually see the symbols change as they've formulated connection to whatever thought that they're having based on their emotions towards it. Okay? And so we deal with this very, very heavily, and we're going to get into all of this. This is going to be the first, series that I'm putting out as Shiva, as the understanding of who I am, and as the understanding of what I'm here to do. I'm Shiva, the destroyer. And I'm here to destroy your perceptions of reality and then show you a new one.